If you've been following me or just simply hanging around my channel for any length of time, you know I love a great looter shooter. And so when Embark Studios debuted Arc Raiders during the 2021 Game Awards, my interest levels just immediately spiked and went to DEFCON 1. Because that trailer looked simply incredible, with massive robotic mechs doing battle with rogue human scavengers in a futuristic post-apocalyptic world where scavenging the remains of civilization and surviving was the name of the game. Think The Matrix, but instead of virtually jacking in, the humans are always coming to the surface, and all without that crazy Agent Smith showing up and just wrecking shit.
Mr. Anderson.
Somewhere in 2023, though, Embark announced that they were pivoting over to a PvEVP extraction shooter platform. And the game was also moving away from the original free-to-play model to now being paid, but without the premium quadruple A price tag, instead coming in somewhere around $40. Now, I love The Division's survival game mode and have dabbled in the extraction genre for years now, so the shift wasn't a big deal, at least not to me. And so, when Embark reached out a few weeks ago and offered to sponsor this video while giving me about 9 hours of unfiltered access to their latest closed test and the freedom to give my honest thoughts, well, I of course jumped at that opportunity. I've now seen pretty much everything the game has to offer, from the mechanics to the gameplay loop, the crafting system, the art style, and even the PvP. And of course, I've got a lot to say about it all. So if you find the video informative, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell, and let's get into what Embark has been cooking up with Arc Raiders. Before we dive into the inner workings of Arc Raiders, what it is, how it plays, all that extra nitty-gritty, you're probably saying to yourself, yeah, Buzz, just give me the abridged version. Just tell us what you thought of it. Is it any good? And, normally that would be a multi-layered complex answer, but in the case of Arc Raiders, it's actually really simple. Yes, this game is fucking awesome. From the unique art style, to the sound design, to the setting, to the movements, PvP, and gunplay, it grabs you within 30 seconds of dropping out of the tutorial, and I stayed absolutely hooked to it up until the moment they would close the servers for the day and turn off the lights. Now, if that's all you wanted, you got it. But if you want to know exactly where Embark has hit a home run with Arc Raiders, along with some of my criticisms, then stick around. In many regards, resist is the mantra for this game, starting off with the common PvE element known as Arc. Now, what's left of humanity lives in underground settlements where the Arc Raiders then use tunnels, lifts, and other means of travel to reach the planet's surface to scavenge for supplies and resources while matching wits with other players and the varying degrees of Arc enemies. You're going to quickly learn to identify the different Arc types and know which you can drop and which to avoid, even learning which are armored and not, with armored requiring heavy ammo to effectively damage them. Now, for instance, you'll see varying sizes of flying drones ranging from very small wasps to one called the Snitch, which will alert more Arc forces to your current location. You can shoot out their fans, in which case they try to compensate for it, but they kind of waggle and weave around in the air. It's all very realistic. You've also got things like spider bots, sniper sentries, which are nasty, roll bots that leave waves of flames in their wake, and from there you can get into the more elite units like Bastions, Rocketeers, and even the Queen. Now, during our test, we rolled up on a Rocketeer and we were quickly taught a lesson in humility, resulting in a total squad wipe where we lost all our equipped gear. Small one should be down. He's coming around the other side of the building. Oh, my God. So if that's the possible result, why would you ever take one of these Arc things on? And that answer is a bit more complicated. Now, the easy response is loot. Downing a piece of Arc Mech is going to give you access to resources that you can use in crafting recipes. For instance, you need X amount of this to upgrade a piece of gear or your crafting bench. But there's always this secondary issue of sound, risk versus reward. You see, Arc bots only shoot when they detect humans, and they're going to chase and hound you with attacks until you either deal with them or get far enough away that they break off their assault. Raiders all firing their weapons at an Arc bot makes an insane amount of noise, and it's up to you to decide if it's worth it to take on for the Arc supplies, because the ruckus you stir up is potentially ringing the dinner bell for other Raider parties to descend on your position, where, 9 times out of 10, they are not there to assist you with that specific Arc encounter. Through your various expeditions to the planet's surface, you'll explore abandoned structures and ruins, taking on other players and, of course, the Arc, all in the search for better and rarer loot, as you attempt to kind of kit bash Arc technology, materials, and trinkets into newer items, tools, and weapons. Now, once you dive into the mechanics of the crafting benches and their various upgrades, you start to get a sense of the depth this game has on tap. Various crafting benches can be built and from there upgraded. Each crafting recipe requires various ingredients, from metal parts to processors, and it can all be found on the planet's surface if you know where to look, or you just get lucky and find it. A few times during our playtest, I wanted to upgrade a specific piece of gear but didn't have the correct materials, and here's where the tracking system built into the game comes into play. Not only can you tag that crafting recipe, so when you do run into a resource you need, it has a specific icon on it, but each resource also gives you some basic hints on where to find it. For instance, it might say, processors can normally be found in residential areas, or something like that, and it's up to you to look for a residential area on your map when you spawn into a round and go there in search of that piece needed for your recipe. You can also complete some basic area POIs or break into things like sealed doors and areas using your melee tool, which again makes an insane amount of noise, which brings us to the second element of resist: PvP. Now, you might have a round where you're engaged in just full-blown shootouts from spawn to extract, while other times, through you avoiding high-traffic areas or just, luck of the draw, you won't see another player or squad for the entire round. And to be crystal clear, you can absolutely spawn into a round solo, where we were told the game is set up to prioritize matching singles versus other singles. I also want to point out that rounds last just 30 minutes, but based on the map sizes, density of Arc mechs, and of course other players, you've got lots of shooties if you want them. Who you run into and what they are packing in terms of kits is a crapshoot, but for someone that has long since moved on from PvP-centric games, I found myself concerned, but actually quickly satisfied by the overall PvP mechanics. While we're on this topic of PvP, we might as well dive into it a little bit further, and I want to break this out into a couple of sub-factors here. The first being movement, or character movement, which I've got to say is not 100% based in reality and physics, but it's not far from it. We're not meta-humans with insane capabilities in this game, so climbing walls and ladders or mantling lower cover takes the amount of time it would take a regular person to do it. I also want to mention that the character movements in Arc Raiders look very realistic, which adds to the overall immersion factor. Reloads require skill, especially when you're in a firefight, because again, nothing in Arc Raiders happens in the blink of an eye. If you get wounded and you need to heal, you have to select a bandage in your tool Hot Wheel. Then you have to hold down a button to tend to your wounds, which takes time and it slows down your movement speed. Same idea with your shields, which by the way you do have in varying degrees of protection. So here you need to break out the shield recharger and then top them off. You also have all sorts of grenades that can be linked to your tool Hot Wheel, all requiring you to select them and then prime and toss. And to add even more tension to the mix, you also have a stamina bar here that, once depleted, dramatically slows you down, effectively making you a sitting duck. In terms of sheer volume of movements included in the game, it's all here, everything that you would expect, including crouch and shoulder swap for your weapons, but going prone is missing from the game. Now, once you get a feel for the pace of the combat, it becomes this frenetic mix of moving, taking cover, calling out your targets using your ping system, reloading your weapon, firing your weapon while also tending to your wounds. And that's just versus another player or squads. You can imagine how frenetic it becomes after that, with multiple squads and a fleet of ARC droids thrown in there as well. The second element of PvP is, of course, the weaponry, consisting of different weapon types like battle rifles, sidearms, full auto ARs, LMGs, 3-round burst weapons, SMGs, and sniper weaponry, just to name a few, built on a tier or rarity system, and of course, with the ability to customize from there through the use of mods like muzzle attachments and even extended mags. Each weapon has distinct handling characteristics like bloom and recoil. Shotguns, of course, excel at point blank, whereas a battle rifle might be more your speed for medium to longer ranges. Also, you never know who you will run up against or just how strong their loadouts are, because there's no visible rank system over another player's heads in this game. So there's no cheating where you see a squad in the distance and they have like a bunch of gold skulls over their heads telling you they are packing some serious firepower. If and when you die, you'll lose everything on your character, save a few precious slots where you can place gear that you cannot lose, which you save for super valuable resources or things like rare key cards, which gain you access to hidden loot rooms with extremely valuable resources. Now, one thing you tend to see with PvEVP extraction shooters is players get stuck in these never-ending death cycles where you drop into a round with some decent equipment and weaponry on you, but you run into a player or squad that has your number that day and you die. And of course, you lose everything that's on your person. You try it again, this time with some stuff maybe you just crafted or had sitting around in your stash. It's low level and same result, you get killed again. And in this case, Arc Raiders has a pretty handy free loadout mechanic you can use, and it's great to speed you up and get you back planetside. You see, if you use this system, it will grant you some lower level, of course, inferior gear that is randomly placed into your backpack, but it saves you time and it gets you back into the thick of battle without you spending resources to try to craft more gear. And again, if you're able to maybe loot a few items during that round and maybe extract, it gets you back onto your feet where you can start to rebuild, removing much of the onboarding process and time hassles players encounter when they die. We'll touch on a few other items of the gameplay in just a moment when I talk about the many strengths and few criticisms I have with Arc Raiders, but for right now, we need to talk about what happens under the planet's surface in SPERANZA, the Raider safe haven where you get to engage with the other half of this game. Now, during our time with the playtest, we got to experience the questing system, both for dailies and the specific vendors, where, for instance, Tion Wen, who was the gun shop vendor, will give you a quest and a weapon that she wants you to field test against a specific piece of arc, and once you complete it, you're rewarded with resources and XP. Now, overall, the Trader's Hub works fine. It's easy to navigate and it's not overly cluttered, but I would have loved to have seen something more than just a menu system, such as a common area to walk around in and interact with the vendors, maybe even to see other players standing there and squad up with them, which I think would contribute not only to immersion, but also to world building. Anyways, that being said, there's still a lot to do here in SPERANZA, from building and upgrading your crafting bench. There's a system, whereas you can use components and tech you have sourced on the planet directly in recipes, or you can break it down even further into basic resources for other crafting needs. If you have the correct ingredients, you can craft ammo, either light, medium, or heavy, depending on your weapon types. There's also various grenades, healing items like bandages, along with shield recharges, and fast defib units for reviving down teammates, because yes, that is a thing. You can revive your teammates in this game. Once you have the correct bench and levels, you can even unlock and craft items like binoculars or zip lines, which adds a whole new level of verticality to the gameplay. If all else fails and you don't find yourself with the necessary materials, you can always engage directly with and or buy items from the vendors, but they are quite pricey, and I found it best to just craft an item or go without until you're able to loot it. Also in SPERANZA, you can upgrade and modify your weapons, shields, character appearance through cosmetics, complete daily quests for in-game currency, and engage with the game's skill tree by investing experience points into either conditioning, survival, or mobility specializations, where you can go full into one branch or sprinkle your points around for a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none approach to your build diversity. Loadouts can also be adjusted here as you move around your two primary weapons and one melee weapon. You can stock up on the correct ammo types needed for those weapons and complete your loadouts with healing supplies, shield rechargers, grenades, and correct key cards depending on if it matches the level you are about to ascend to. And finally, there's also a full black market and various battle passes you can purchase here using Raider tokens that you get by playing the game and leveling up. Now, once you've unlocked a specific battle pass, you can then buy items inside it using cred that you get from completing daily challenges. And if all this sounds like Helldivers and how their war bond system works, that's because in many regards, it is. All right, let's get down to the brass tacks of talking the good, the bad, and the ugly with ARC Raiders. And to be honest with you, I saw no ugly, zero with this game. And my bad was more like, it's good, just not as good as the rest of the game. And that's probably as good a place to start as any. So my criticisms here are probably going to seem kind of minor to you, as there are more preferences for changes to be made to this game in the future, starting off with the weapon scroll wheel that uses the mouse scroll to cycle between primary weapons 1, 2, and your melee weapon. So the scroll is fine for two weapons, but when you add in the third, in this case, your melee weapon, and with how your characters hold the weapons in front of them in third person, kind of blocked from view by your character's body, well, I found myself often getting confused as to what weapon I had equipped, and I ended up moving over to and using exclusively buttons 1 and 2 for my primary swaps, along with button 4 for my melee weapons, while completely avoiding the scroll wheel mechanics, which I think is a damn shame. It's there to be used. It's something small, I know, but Embark and the developers asked for honest feedback, and that's one item I think would be better suited exclusively to a two-weapon scroll while relying completely on the hotkey assigned to move over to your melee weapon. I'd also highly recommend a hotkey specifically assigned for grenades. I also found the compass at the top of the screen to be far too light and cluttered to actually be helpful at all. It doesn't use a stroke or drop shadow on the directionals unless you land directly on one of them. And if you're out in a bright environment with the sun out or with a bright light source kind of shining directly at you, it blends into the point of your compass just not being visible. Removing the clutter and adding a background shadow or stroke to the lettering would go a long way to making this thing far more usable. And finally, even as good as the sound design is in this game, and it's really freaking well done, when you're inside a building with your squad kind of all running around you with, say, maybe another squad a floor up or down from your position, locating the enemy footsteps and pinpointing their current directions and heading is damn near impossible. It just sounds like this stampede of boots. That's just the sentry turret that's shooting at me. Blazes up on the wall, you can see the red lights. Behind you. Got him? Yep. We got him. There needs to be a stronger differentiation between friend and foe, along with maybe a muffling or timbre difference when there are enemy footsteps and they're not on the same level as you were currently standing. Now, Battlefield 3 and 4 both nailed this mechanic of making footsteps sound different enough that you could hear an enemy coming, and in a game where time to kill can be quick and there are so many paths and sightlines, having pinpoint accurate sound design is an absolute must. Besides those items and criticisms I just spoke about, along with a few general questions about this genre as a whole, I really have nothing but compliments for ARC Raiders, which really surprised me considering I had a ton of questions going into this playtest. You as a viewer may be looking at the footage and think that what you're seeing is actual studio doctored B-roll, but that's how this game looks right now in person. It has a serious level of polish to it, and as I like to call it, fit and finish that is simply extraordinary, which is not surprising considering the studio's previous work on the finals, which came out in late 2023. The third-person perspective is also done incredibly well. As in other titles that use third-person perspective, you'll tend to see all sorts of camera jank and collision issues, especially in close-quarters combat, but I saw none of that with this one. The over-the-shoulder perspective and camera rotation was also done really well, and of course, third person is a great way to display the varied and wild-looking cosmetic bundles you can unlock and equip. Lighting and how this game uses and manipulates the differences between extreme indoor darkness requiring flashlights to outside moonlit terrains, along with glowing in the dark arc beacons, all these searchlights, shadows, the brightness of day, the flares firing into the air when a raider is killed, along with all these other lighting effects. Again, I loved every minute of it. Also, special shout out to the sound design and music tracks used in this game, which are both on another level. Anytime we were in the player hub in SPERANZA, we would comment on how strong these Tron-inspired beats and ambiance tracks were in this player hub area. Sound design, especially the varied and unique beeps, bops, and boops the ArcBots make, along with some of their louder, horror-inspired shrieks and horn blasts, will deafen, scare, and surprise you. Hearing the different weapon types popping off in the distance, the massive explosions, arc reinforcement sounds as they hurl down to the planet, it's all very foreign to hear, but it's really well done. It's believable, and it adds a level of uniqueness and immersion to the game that is, again, simply insane. I know I keep going on, but I also wanted to mention there's a timed system at work here. As the round timer counts down, it will slowly close down potential extraction points, pushing those late round extraction artists into tighter and tighter proximity, which creates a lot of friction, which I think is needed in a game of this style. Also, strong props to the studio for not being afraid to include squad and proximity VoIP. It's how I grew up playing these games, and I love to see it still being included here. Okay, all of that aside, I did, however, say that I think I have a very poignant question about this genre in general. And despite the top-shelf polish on display here, despite this unique art style and setting and vibes Arc Raiders is laying down here, I don't know how well it's going to be received once it goes to market later this year. Now, if this were a strictly PvE experience, or it was launching with included solo queues and a dedicated at-launch PvE-only game mode, this wouldn't even be a topic for discussion. And I also personally like the fact that the game is now not free-to-play, which will hopefully cut significantly back on the cheater epidemic that has plagued the free-to-play PvP market for so long. But again, back to the point here, with the likes of other titles trying to push their way into this sort of niche market later this year, and you know who they are, along with the established heavyweights already in place, I honestly don't know how this is all going to play out in 3 to 6 months' time when Arc Raiders is supposedly going live. But as always, I'm highly interested to see what you have to say about Arc Raiders. Are you in on this one at launch? Or are you going to sit back, watch, and wait? Definitely leave me any feedback or questions you have, and I'll do my best to answer them. All the gameplay you see featured in my video was from the current tech test and build for the game, and by the way, there's another one of these starting tomorrow. That's right, April the 30th through May the 4th, available for you to access on Steam, Epic Games, PlayStation, and Xbox. Trust me, you want to get in and try this out for yourselves. I made it easy for you. Just check in the video description or pinned comments for links to that one. If you happen to like the video, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell. If you want to take your support a step further, consider becoming a channel member with tiers and member-only perks. And until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.